An estimated 50 million people were living in modern slavery in 2021. And I think that's still the same or worse, including 28 million who were forced in labor and 22 million forced in marriage. This is according to the latest global estimates produced by the International Labour Organization, Work Free, and the International Organization for Migration. It's a UN report. Countries lose about $492 billion annually to global tax abuse, of which 2/3 are through multinational corporations shifting profits to tax havens and wealthy individuals hiding assets offshore. That's from a Tax Justice Network report of 2024. Corruption remains widespread globally, with 2025 Corruption Perception Index showing that more than 2/3 of countries score below 50. That's a scale of 0 to 100. 50 is about halfway, indicating serious governance failures. Declining democratic checks and increasing restrictions, which are enabling abuses of power and weakening accountability. That's Transparency International. And then wage theft is a persistent global issue. The International Labour Organization reports that over 2 billion workers worldwide are affected each year, representing about 10% of all wage workers. That's World Metrics Market Research report of this year. And then marginalized and indigenous communities disproportionately bear the burden of toxic pollution, climate-driven displacement, and ecological destruction. This environmental racism and extractive industries continue to expose those communities to heightened environmental risks, with millions displaced annually in regions such as South Asia, Africa, and so on. That's based on Greenpeace UK report. Why am I reading all that? I'm reading all that because this is what's happening now in our time. A long, long time ago, this similar story, messages, realities have been happening for generations, which then suggests that we as human beings still struggle to do some of the very basic things that we believe in. We're looking at justice and care for the poor. Today, we're going to look at a man who, a long time ago, picked this up and what happened then, and then see how that affects us today. So before becoming a prophet, a man who was a simple shepherd and a fig farmer from the southern kingdom of Judah. His name is Amos. At that time, the northern kingdom of Israel was enjoying a period of great wealth and power under King Jeroboam II. Through military success and territorial expansion, Israel had become a prosperous and influential nation. But beneath the surface, something was deeply wrong. While the nation was thriving economically, militarily, and so on, the people of the land had drifted away from God. The rich exploited the poor. Injustice was widespread, and oppression had become normal or normalized. So God sent Amos from the south to deliver a challenging message to the north. Although the people claimed to belong to God, their actions told a different story. Their selfishness, injustice, and mistreatment of others were offensive to him, and he would hold them accountable if they continue doing so. As we hear Amos's message, it's worth us asking ourselves, does this picture seem familiar to us today? In our societies, our communities, our leaders, our nations, or even among those who call themselves Christians, what does that picture look like? I want to pause there for a moment and just, as you reflect on that, look around locally, regionally, and globally around the world. And the message from a long time ago, something that pushed as a normal, ordinary man who was a farmer to go and carry a message from one part to another because of what was going on, the injustices that were happening. He wasn't a theologian trained in any way, given any special education. When we read through the book of Amos, some of the language used was quite plain, questionable. But here is a man, just a simple person like you and I, who was sent to deliver that. So as we think through that, I wanted to pause and reflect, ask yourself the question, is God saying something to me today in relation to justice, injustice, and all that I can be doing? I can be going somewhere to share, to deliver. Amos's name apparently meant burden, or he who carries a burden. What a name to give to a child, But maybe it wasn't in that, it was in what he was going to do. Become challenging the nations around. So let's have a closer look. And if you forget anything and everything that I say, please take Amos 5:24 with you. Amos 5:24. It says, but let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never failing stream. Let justice roll on like a river, and righteousness like a never failing stream. So Amos spoke to a nation that was prosperous on the outside. I wonder what that looks like for us today. What our nations, what the Isle of Man, what the United Kingdom, what the West and other countries around the world, what that looks like. Prosperous on the outside. So here we're thinking economically as one thing that does that. Hopefully the health was also amazing and so on. But this nation was corrupt on the inside. People attended worship like we are doing right now, offered sacrifices, at least we don't offer sacrifices anymore, and observed religious festivals, yet they ignored the poor and abused their power. A reminder that God is not impressed by religious activity unless, especially when it's disconnected from justice, mercy, and care for those in need. He's not interested in hypocrisy. We can't sit and say how awful, but yet do nothing about it. The idea of justice is having things that we do, actions that we take to make things right. You know what? We connect with people irrespective of who they are, where they've come from, how they look like, how they sound like. We look right through that. So how does that look like for us? So there are 4 key points that I want to pick up on. The first one is that God sees how we treat the vulnerable. And on that, the first question is, who is the vulnerable? What does the vulnerable look like in your community, in your family, in our societies? Amos 2:6-7 focuses on the wealthy who are being accused of selling the poor for financial gain and denying justice for those who needed it the most. People are treated as commodities rather than people who are created in God's own image and who deserved fairness. The lesson is God pays attention to how the weak, the vulnerable, the poor, the disadvantaged are treated. Do we overlook those who are struggling in some way or another? Do we speak up when someone is treated unfairly? Are we willing to help when we see a genuine need? Are we too concerned about what we look like to others? If I do this, I might look not quite. I might no longer fit in with the group that I hang out with. Is that your concern? Number 2, prosperity must never come through exploitation. Amos 4:1 condemns those who lived in comfort while oppressing the poor. The luxury came at the expense of others. Amos 8:4-6 describes dishonest business practices, unfair pricing, and cheating customers for profit. God's concern is not merely how much we have, but how we obtain it and how we use it. Nothing that I've read through the book of Amos says you shall not have this, or you're not allowed to have this. You can't have money, you can't have wealth, you can't have that. It doesn't say that. It is, if that becomes your focal point, that you ignore things that are going on around you. That's the issue, and we're being challenged for that. Are we honest in our work and business dealings? Some of us are in maybe managerial positions, leadership positions, influential positions, or we used to. Even if we don't work today, we're still in some position with those people we're connected with. How do we treat them? Do we treat employees, colleagues, customers, clients, and colleagues fairly, even if it is not in our own interest? Do we use our resources to serve those who are in need, or only ourselves? Point number 3, justice requires integrity. Justice requires integrity. Amos 5:11-12 exposes corrupt courts where bribes influenced decisions and the poor could not obtain justice. A healthy society depends on genuine truth, fairness, and integrity, all freely available to us through God. How are we dealing with this in our day-to-day? How does that look like in the connections and the people you hang around in our community? Do we stand for what is right even when it's going to cost us something? And then point number 4, God wants more than religiousness, than rituals, than traditions, than the things that we have become so used to because it is just what we do. Amos 5:24 says, let justice roll on like a river. That's the one I opened up with. And righteousness like a never failing stream. It's continuous. It's happening. If you were to stand in that flowing water in a stream somewhere and feel that pressure of that water, but it's constant, it doesn't stop. Let justice roll on like a river, and righteousness like a never failing stream, which means there are no exceptions. It doesn't matter who it is, which community it is. We are called to be those people in those areas. God rejected worship that was disconnected from everyday life. Are you a person who waits for Sunday or Wednesday or whatever to do your worship? If that's the case, then maybe you need to be talking to God about it. People sang songs, offered sacrifices, but their treatment of others contradicted their worship. True worship affects how we live from Monday to Monday. It's not just Sunday. Does our faith, does your faith influence how you treat other people? Are we known for compassion, for generosity, and fairness? Is justice flowing from our lives like a constant stream? The message of Amos is relevant today, as we saw him being sent a long, long time ago from one kingdom to another. It is here today. The injustices, the unfairness, the exploitation, and all those things that aren't godly, they're here today. Caring for the poor, treating others fairly. We must shun oppression, corruption, exploitation, and injustice. Isaiah 1:17 focuses, it says, summarizing it, you've got to learn to do the right thing, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead for the case of the widow. So as we finish, I want you to challenge yourself and maybe ask every single day of this coming week, who is vulnerable around you? What you can do to show God's justice and care to those people. Even small acts of generosity, fairness, compassion can become part of the river of justice that Amos envisioned. To be good, we must be willing to do what is right in the eyes of God. We can't sit on the borders. We've got to be willing to stand up and be counted, even if it means upsetting someone else, even if it means people walking away from you. Are you prepared to do that? Jesus did it. So what are you prepared to do? What are you willing to do? Now, I'm going to stop there and just have a think through that. We're going to have communion shortly, and I think I've lost half of the congregation. I know that's going to happen. We're going to have communion shortly, but I want you to just take time to reflect on that. Just pause, maybe close your eyes, and ask God to show you something that He wants to show you, where righteousness, where injustice, where unfairness, all these things are real and here today, and what you can do about it. So just take that moment, and we're going to get some elements, and then we're going to share together.